I finally got round to watching Godzilla. This is the 2014 film directed by Gareth Edwards, written by Max Borenstein, and we have a cast including, to name just a few, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Ken Watanabe, Elizabeth Olsen, and many, many others. Great performances. That's absolutely one of the things about the film that I want to praise. In general, I didn't love it, but I also think it's worth making clear that I'm not a huge fan of Godzilla. And the fact that it's taken me over a decade to watch this does kind of suggest that I wasn't that excited about it, but I decided it's worth watching. It's worth at least giving it a go. And I didn't hate the experience, but I didn't love it. So I'll talk a little bit about the narrative. No spoilers, of course, but I just want to make it clear that I'm not full of praise for it, but I'm also not a huge Godzilla fan. If I were a big Godzilla fan, I might love it more. Or maybe I'd like it less. Maybe I'd have higher expectations and it wouldn't deliver. I'd be very keen to know if you do love Godzilla and you went into this with specific expectations, did it meet those expectations? For context, it has 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb across 454,000 reviews and ratings, which is a pretty average rating. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. It's absolutely fine. And to be honest, I think I agree with that. Going into it, I didn't know what it was about, and I thought it was going to be purely about Godzilla, but it's actually about these monsters called the Muto, and I have to say I love the design of them. Visually, the film is spectacular. The performances and the visual quality are amazing. I love the characters of the Muto. The design of them, I think they looked amazing, and they're causing havoc, and I don't know if I can say Godzilla's involvement. I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, but Godzilla is involved, but not as much as I thought. It's not necessarily the narrative I thought going into it, but everybody's under threat at the attack of these Muto, and as a concept, on the one hand, is pretty straightforward, but on the other, I feel like there's a lot of fluff and padding. I feel like it's more complex than it needed to be. It's not necessarily difficult to follow. There are some films that are complex and overly complicated. It's not too complicated in the sense that I wasn't able to keep up with it, but I feel like maybe there was too much substance, and I feel like that took away from the actual creatures themselves, and I think focusing on them a bit more would have been more interesting. It was very slow. Very, very slow, and it's a long film. It's 2 hours. Now, to be honest, a film of this nature could be 2 hours and it could be reasonable, but for me at least, it was just tremendously slow. It took a long time for anything to happen, and then when something did happen, it then slowed down again immediately afterwards. So yes, the fact that the world is up against these Mutos? What's the plural of Muto? I don't know. The Muto is great. It's a great concept. Godzilla, I would have liked a little bit more of, but I can understand within the narrative. It makes sense within the narrative, but certainly it's not what I expected going into it. So, in general, visually it is absolutely stunning. The performances are great. The creatures look great. And I think just the concept in general is brilliant. However, the narrative is more complex than it needs to be. I feel like there's a lot of fussiness, there's a lot of busyness, there's a lot of padding, and that is tremendously boring. So the story, as a concept, I liked. I didn't care for the execution. I don't think it worked very well. But as I said, going into it, I didn't have any specific expectations. I'm not a big Godzilla fan. Maybe my opinion would be different. Maybe I'd think it was even worse. I don't know. As a one-time watch, it was an okay experience. I definitely think the narrative needed a bit of work, and it could have been a lot more enjoyable. But visually, yeah, absolutely stunning. The performances are great. The human characters I found to be not the most interesting, but I didn't dislike anybody, but certainly I wasn't particularly bothered about any of them. But in general, it's an okay film. If you're a big Godzilla fan, you might love it a lot more than I did. But as I said, if you're a big Godzilla fan, you might absolutely hate it. Maybe it's not as good as other Godzilla films. I have seen a couple of others. I've seen maybe 2 others, and I might watch more in general. But with this one, it's not a great story. The events are very, very slow, and if those events had been interesting, then the pacing might have been fine, but unfortunately it just feels like there's a lot of padding, and it doesn't work very well. At least it could have been a lot better. Godzilla is not an amazing film from my perspective, but I'm aware that my perspective is not necessarily that of the target audience. I feel like it was aimed at existing Godzilla fans. Certainly, if, like me, you're not a big Godzilla fan, I don't think it's a film that's going to turn you into a big Godzilla fan. I could be wrong. It didn't for me, though. And in general, it's fine. And I'd love to know what you think of it depending on what your perspective it is. And from my perspective, I can say the 2014 Godzilla was an okay one-time experience. I'm not now desperate to watch other Godzilla films, but I might at some point.